Hello there, my name is the Taskmaster. Welcome back to another episode of Utterly Destroy Your Game File. If you're new here, welcome to the series. The idea is to destroy our game file using as many glitches as possible with as little setup as possible. This means we'll be doing everything from a brand new file. Right now, we're working on destroying our Breath of the Wild save file. In the previous video, we needed to prepare our file by gathering resources that would benefit us in our quest. Because of that, there were only a few glitches I could actually show off. Today, we're going to spice things up a little bit. The glitches we'll be looking at in this video are potentially some of the most broken glitches in the game, and they will serve as the building blocks for other glitches for the rest of the series. Today, we'll be looking at menu overloading and inventory slot transfer. This video will provide detailed steps for both glitches, and we'll also be looking at some of their applications. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with menu overloading since it'll be necessary to know when we cover inventory slot transfer. The goal is to use memory-intensive materials to push the game's memory usage to the limit. This will cause certain functions of the game to fail, resulting in things like being able to transfer durability from weapon to weapon, or duplicating weapons. There's a few things that we'll need before we can begin. First, you'll need to have some multi-shot bows in your inventory. It doesn't matter which type you have, as long as it can shoot more than one arrow at a time. You will also need at least one shock arrow. In my previous video, I showed where you can get some shock arrows and duplex bows. If you haven't seen that video, I would recommend watching through it first before going through the rest of this video. I recommend getting around 5 to 7 bows, but later I'll show you a way to overload your menu that only requires 2. We'll start with 5 to 7 bows first. Make sure you've equipped one of your multi-shot bows and shock arrows. From here, perform the following steps. Press ZR to draw your bow. You must have it drawn for this to work properly. Pause the game. Drop the bow you have equipped. Equip the next one, then unpause. You should see the previously equipped bow drop to the ground. Repeat this process until Link looks like this in the menu. We can do a ton of interesting things while in this state. For example, if you have a weapon already equipped and attempt to equip another one, it will fail to register. In this example, the weapon I have equipped in-game differs from the weapon I have equipped in the inventory. This is known as an equipment desync, and we can use this to our advantage in multiple ways. When you desync to another weapon, you can transfer certain properties of your previously equipped weapon to it. The most notable property is durability. If you overload your menu, desync to another piece of equipment, and then damage it, the durability value of the desynced weapon will be overwritten by your previous weapon's durability. Though because we technically had to damage the weapon, our desynced weapon has one less durability. If you have a high durability weapon, you can transfer the durability to your other weapons to help them last longer, or conduct repairs on the go. You'll want to have your high durability weapon equipped before overloading your menu. You can do this with all weapon types, with melee weapons and shields being the easiest to work with. Bows, on the other hand, can be a bit tricky. If you try to desync from a high durability bow to another, it doesn't really work too well. Trying to equip the bow in the first place isn't even possible unless you unequip your multi-shot bow, unpause, and then equip the high durability bow, at which point your menu will no longer be overloaded. So here's how to deal with this. Overload your menu, and drop your equipped multi-shot bow, this time without equipping another one. Unpause and pause the game, equip your high durability bow, unpause, press ZR to draw the bow, and then pause. Your menu should now be properly overloaded, and you should be able to desync to another bow. We can also use equipment desync for weapon duplication. I'll show you 3 different ways that you can accomplish this: the throw dupe, replacement dupe, and shock trap dupe. The throw dupe only applies to melee weapons, so we'll start with that one first. Here are some prerequisites, and these apply to all 3 duplication methods. Number 1. Make sure you have the weapon you want to duplicate already equipped before starting. Number 2. The weapon that you desync to needs to be a different type from the weapon you want to duplicate. For example, if I wanted to duplicate a botw shield, I would need something different, like a pot lid or any other kind of shield for it to work. Number 3. You'll want to have some empty weapon slots in your inventory. The number of slots depends on how many weapons you want to duplicate. Overload your menu and desync to another melee weapon. Throw the weapon and pick it back up. When you open the inventory, you will see a duplicate of your melee weapon. For bows and shields, we can't throw them, so we'll have to use different methods to be able to duplicate them. This brings us to our second method, the replacement dupe. For this method, you will need to have other weapons in your inventory that you are willing to lose, since this will directly replace the equipment that we're desyncing. Once again, overload your menu, desync to another piece of equipment, unpause and pause the game, drop your equipment, and pick it up. The desynced weapon will be replaced by your target weapon. For specific bows, make sure to use the trick I showed you to desync to the proper bow. The third and final duplication method utilizes something known as a shock trap. For this, you will need a great thunderblade and something else that can conduct electricity. To create the shock trap, swing the thunderblade, and during the swinging animation, pause the game and drop it. It looks relatively normal right now, but if you drop a conductive material next to it, it will start to conduct electricity. If you drop the thunderblade too late in the animation, it won't work. You need to drop it toward the beginning or the middle part of the animation. From here, equip the weapon you want to duplicate, overload your menu, and desync to another weapon. Pull out your weapon and walk towards the shock trap. You will be forced to drop your weapon and pick it back up. This allows you to duplicate equipment without replacing anything in your inventory. You have to be holding the weapon in your hands while getting electrocuted. You won't drop anything otherwise. Make sure you also have plenty of food or fairies so you don't die. We can also use menu overloading to take advantage of an exploit known as infinite gems. At the Riverside Stable, you will find an NPC that will exchange gems for any Royal Guard equipment you have. If you have any such equipment, go ahead and show it to her if you haven't already. She'll give you 300 rupees for the first weapon and a gemstone for every other weapon. To take advantage of this, we need to do an equipment desync onto our Royal Guard equipment, so we'll need to have a different weapon equipped. Overload your menu, desync to your Royal Guard equipment, and attempt to give it to Parsi. She'll take the Royal Guard equipment and give you the gem, but the weapon will stay in your inventory. This means that we can get an unlimited amount of gems from this one interaction. When you're done, you can sell them to any vendor for a nice little payout. One last thing. I mentioned that I would demonstrate how to overload your menu using only 2 multi-shot bows. So let's go ahead and do that. Once again, make sure you have shock arrows and one of your multi-shot bows equipped. stand up against any wall and face away from it. Draw your bow, pause the game, drop your equipped bow, and equip the next one. This next part requires quick inputs, so I'll explain them first. Unpause the game, and as soon as you possibly can, press A to pick up the bow you dropped and pause the game again. I'll show the inputs so you can get a better idea of the timing. Repeat this process until you have overloaded your menu successfully. From here, you can desync your equipment as you please. This will keep your menu overloaded for a short time, but if you unpause, the menu will properly load again. If you want to keep it unloaded, you will need more bows, but you can always duplicate your multi-shot bows to get more of them. You may run into situations where you can't properly overload the menu. If you run into this problem, consider these variables. Your physical location will greatly affect how well menu overloading works, since different locations will contribute to memory usage more than others. Here are some of the best locations that you can use for this glitch. I would recommend giving them a visit if the menu doesn't seem to want to cooperate. Another variable is time. Waiting around for a certain amount of time will allow more memory to be used up, which can help you overload your menu. It's recommended to wait at least 1 to 3 minutes in the area that you're in. With the basics of menu overloading out of the way, we can move on to another, arguably more broken application of this glitch: inventory slot transfer. The science behind this glitch is very complicated and would take way too long for me to explain, so I'll give you a summary of how it works before we start the process. To put it simply, inventory slot transfer is a glitch that allows us to transfer things like materials, weapons, and key items from one save file to another. We can achieve this by utilizing a trick known as offset slot generation. When generating offset slots, the game will essentially create a copy of your current inventory. And when you load another save file, be it an autosave or a master mode file, your inventory will get copied over to that file. Offset slots will be generated from right to left in your inventory. For example, if you wanted to transfer some of your melee weapons, you would need to generate enough offset slots to cover your key items and work your way into your weapons. You can reduce the number of offset slots you need to generate by getting rid of items that you don't want transferred. This includes spending spirit orbs or Korok seeds if you have them, eating food, dropping or selling materials, selling armor, and dropping any intervening weapons. Basically, the less you have in your inventory, the fewer offset slots you'll need to generate. Though I would recommend saving materials specifically since they'll be required to generate offset slots in the first place. I'll go over the basic process of generating offset slots before we get into transferring specific items. To generate offset slots, you will need to have different types of materials in your inventory. Make sure you have at least 2 of each material. This will be important later on. There's a few different methods of generating offset slots, the most well-known being menu overloading and Arrowless offset generation. We'll start with menu overloading, but I'll cover both methods in this video. First, find any vendor. This can be a shopkeeper, or you can use Beetle at any stable. Overload your menu, then attempt to hold up to 4 different materials. You cannot use the same material for this process. You must use 4 different materials. Unpause the game, and unequip your multi-shot bow. Go to the vendor, and sell the remainder of your held materials. Once you're done, cancel the sale. Hold one final material and drop it on the ground. We have just created 4 offset slots, and this is the maximum that you can generate at a time. You can repeat this process to create more offset slots to cover your inventory until you reach the items that you want to transfer. Offset slots will ignore empty slots in your inventory. So as a general rule of thumb, if you want to transfer specific materials, you should count how many key items you have, then add the number of materials or weapons that you want to transfer. Additionally, if you want to transfer any bows or melee weapons, you will need to account for any arrow slots that you have occupied. Once you've done that, just load the save file you want to transfer them to, and they will be transferred. There's another method we can use to generate offset slots known as Arrowless offset generation. This method removes the multi-shot bow requirement, but it's a little more difficult to execute. For this method, you will need a shield, at least 2 melee weapons, one of which must be one-handed, and remote bombs. You will also need at least 1 material with 1x stack. Once you have them, perform the following steps. Equip your shield and melee weapon if you haven't already. Place a bomb on the ground. Unsheath your weapon. Put away the weapon. And before the sheathing animation ends, unequip your shield. Pick up the bomb, throw it, and equip your shield. Now, go to your inventory, hold your 1x stack material and 4 other materials. Hold ZL, and switch to your one-handed melee weapon. Keep holding ZL at this point. Jump, and press D-pad left to open your shield menu. Let go of ZL, and buffer the shield menu until Link starts putting the shield on his back. Then, unequip it. Your materials should now be stuck to Link's hand. Now, we need to sell our held materials, but we can't actually talk to the vendor. To talk to them, press D-pad down to whistle, and very quickly press A immediately after. The timing for this is pretty precise. When you go to sell your materials, you should see your 1x stack material grayed out with 0x. If you don't see that, cancel the sale and redo the previous steps. Now, sell your held materials, and when you're done, your materials will fall to the ground. Repeat this process until you have the offset you need. Here's one more thing to keep in mind about this glitch. Once you generate offset slots, the glitch will remain active for the entirety of your play session. No amount of reloading saves, entering shrines, or even starting a new file will disable the glitch. And every time you load a save file, you risk some of your materials getting duplicated depending on how many offset slots you have generated. This isn't necessarily a huge problem with materials or weapons, but it can be bad for certain key items, unsellable armor, and arrow slots. If you have less than 500 of any item that can't be dropped or sold, they can be duplicated and occupy 2 different slots at the same time, and they cannot be combined into one stack. It's also important to not make any sort of manual save while inventory slot transfer is active, because if you do have things like duplicated Korok seeds or spirit orbs or arrow stacks, they will permanently be stuck in your inventory. The only way to disable the glitch is to close your game using the Switch home menu. Once you've done that, you can relaunch the game and load your save without any problems. It's good to make this a habit if you're doing anything related to inventory slot transfer. With that, we have once again completed our objective. I know this video was a bit on the longer side compared to last episode, but there was just a lot of information to cover, and I wanted to make sure I got as much information as possible without the video being over 30 minutes long. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at some of the applications of inventory slot transfer specifically. If you have any questions regarding the glitches I showed in this video, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll be sure to explain or clarify anything you might be confused about. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like to show some support, and consider subscribing if you don't want to miss any future installments. And with that, I shall take my leave. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you next time.